To the Batmobile. Let's go.
Atomic batteries to power. Turbines to speed.
Roger. Ready to move out.
Hi everyone, my name is Jessica Petrovich, and I just finished my student teaching yesterday at Chartiers Valley Primary School in 2nd grade. And just like Angela told us before, they switched in 4th grade. Well, at CB, they switch as young as 2nd grade. So for language arts, the classroom that I was in and the one across the hall, we switched for language arts. And then for math, we switched between 4 classes, which was even crazier, but it ended up being the best possible situation for the kids. So tonight I'm going to tell you about differentiated instruction and how it can turn every child into a superhero. So the question is, what is differentiated instruction? Well, there is a lot of misconceptions about differentiated instruction, and I know personally, the first time I heard differentiated instruction, I was terrified of it, and as soon as I heard that, I did not want to have anything to do with it, because the way it was described to me, I thought that I was going to have to write a lesson plan for each individual student, and that just terrified me. But as I went through my 2nd grade student teaching, I realized that it is so much more than that, and at the same time so much less than what I was expecting. It was so much easier once you understand what it is. So I have 2 quotes about differentiated instruction. Differentiation is a way of teaching. It's not a program or package of worksheets. It asks teachers to know their students well so they can provide each one with experiences and tasks that will improve learning. The long-term goal of teaching assumes responsibility for adjusting instruction according to students' specific needs rather than following a predetermined skill sequence that may not match students' development. And the classes that I had for 2nd grade, once we switched, I had the lower students both times. So I was really working hands-on with all of the kids who really, really needed the differentiation. And it was so wonderful to see how much we could help these students. There was one child in particular who had just come to Chartiers Valley after being at a different school for most of the year. He came over and he really struggled. When he first came, they were learning 3- and 4-digit addition and subtraction, and this student was still struggling to do 1- and 2-digit addition and subtraction. So imagine being a 7-year-old boy coming into a different school where you know nobody and you can't do the work. And my whole goal was to make him feel, at the very least, welcome, because this little boy has a list of medical things a mile long, and he is just the sweetest boy, and he grew to be one of the best students that I've ever had. So what differentiation is? It is valuing and planning for diversity. No 2 people are the same, so why should we expect them to learn the same? The Common Core and all of the standards want us to teach so that we just get the information done. But that's not how we learn best. I can produce a PowerPoint and show that I understand learning, but not every person can do that. People learn in different ways and can show that they learn in different ways, and that's what differentiation wants to focus on. It wants to show that it's student-focused. It shouldn't just be me up here telling you information and expecting you to write it and remember it for a test, and then we move on to the next subject and do the same thing. we need to show students how they can show us what they know. Because if they can't do that, how are we going to prepare them to be in the real world? And that's another thing. We have to use problem solving for the kids. I remember math class being the worst subject for me. I struggled with math. And I know that's a common struggle for people, because when I was growing up, what do I need math for? I'm not going to be a mathematician, but my older brother is. He's going to be a doctor of statistics one day. So props to him, but he couldn't be with us tonight. But I could never do that. And I remember the one time asking my dad, why do I need to know this? I didn't have a use for what I was learning. And unfortunately, that's how a lot of kids feel. And differentiation is to help those kids understand why they need to know this. And it's not just for a test. We need to show them what they're learning is going to be used in everyday life. What differentiation it is not. It is not extra work on top of good teaching. It is very simple, and I have a lot of examples that I can show you of how easy it was for me. It's not individualized instruction. It's not always being one-on-one with kids, although some kids do need that, but not every single person requires that. Many gifted kids, you can just hand them something and they can just go with it and do more than what you wanted them to do, and that's perfect for them. But someone else needs a little more pushing, and that's perfectly fine too. It's not IEPs for everybody. IEP is an individualized education plan. That is not what every student comes in. You don't just walk into the classroom first day of school, here you go, everyone gets one. That's not what it is. And I was so afraid that that's what it was going to look like. And it's also not just group work. Although group work can come into play for this, it is not just, okay, you're in a group, you're in a group, you're in a group, here's your assignment, go. You have to provide students with the scaffolding they need in order for them to learn. So how can you implement it? The first thing you need to realize is that everybody learns in a different way, diversity. And it's not just the color of your skin or the color of your hair for diversity, it's how you learn. Like Lori taught us, she learns through movement, and that's wonderful. I saw many students in our classroom that needed to move. So I would tell them, all right, it's time for you to get up and go do some jumping jacks, and then you can come back and work, because I could tell that they were restless, they needed a break. And I needed a break too, so I'd get up and we had an exercise ball, and sometimes I'd just go sit on that during our prep period and get my movement out of the way. You have to give choices. For younger students, it's a little bit harder, but on the Scholastic website, they give many different options for differentiation and for providing assignments. Like I said before, I can do a PowerPoint. That's no problem for me. But you can have a reader's theater where kids make up a story and tell their information that way. And that's a beautiful way for them to get up and practice public speaking, for one, and being able to dramatize what they've learned and make it real for them. Problem solving. They have to be able to focus on big ideas and expand their thinking. And in our math worksheets provided by the Common Core, there was always one question that was supposed to expand their thinking. But is one question in each section really enough to help them expand their thinking? No. We need to help them expand their thinking every day, not just once. And group work, not all the time, but group work does work. We had an assignment to do writing. And in our language arts class, we had 4 different stations. And we were lucky enough that during our language arts and math time, because we had the lower achieving students, we had a special ed teacher with us that was co-teaching. So for language arts time, she taught a group, I taught a group, and the regular classroom teacher taught a group, and then we had one independent station. And during that independent station, we had the kids work together to do something. And it was so wonderful to see how these kids would cheer each other on. The one time last week, I was teaching kids about writing, and we were supposed to be writing, and this one little kid was having such a hard time with the conclusion, and 3 students, not even his group, came over and were helping him and cheering him on. And that, I almost cried right then and there because of how wonderful it was to see these kids coming over and supporting their fellow classmate. It was just wonderful to see that. And we need more of that in the classroom because you learn through teaching. At least that's what I do. So this is what I did for preschool. One of the lessons I did was on, our theme was clothing, and we were doing a lesson on sorting buttons in different ways. So counting them, looking at the shape, the size, the color, the texture, and all that fun stuff. So this is the spreadsheet that I made for myself afterwards to track the students' progress. But I was in a Head Start classroom, so we had students ages 3, 4, and 5. A new 3-year-old and a 5-year-old who's going to kindergarten in the fall. They are so completely different. So how can we expect them to know the same things and do the same things? So for this lesson, I have them grouped by age. This is our big section of 5-year-olds who all received 10 buttons. And then here's our smaller section of 4-year-olds who received 8 buttons, and our even smaller group of 3-year-olds who received 5 buttons. It worked for them because they were still receiving the same instruction. They all had to do the same thing, but I gave the older kids more because they were able to work with more. And the 3-year-olds weren't trying to put them up their nose and chew on them and everything. So it was great. It worked out perfectly for them. So then I was able to make notes of who needed help with what. And then the next time we were able to help them. And some of this stuff is hard for them to understand. I mean, color, not so much, but shapes, at that age, they're still learning about shapes. Size, it was really hard for them because a lot of the buttons were so small. And then another one was just a little bit bigger. It's hard for me to discern which one is bigger. So how can we expect small children to do that? Because they had such a hard time doing simple addition and subtraction within 30. So their number line went from 0 to 30, and I had them, they touched and they went down as they were counting because they couldn't see it in their mind and they couldn't use their fingers. So this worked for them. And I started off with doing this dark Sharpie, and then it progressed to just having pen, so a smaller line for them, and then it progressed to this. This was just on Tuesday. I wrote most of the numbers for the problems, but the little boy solved them without any lines on the paper, and it was just so amazing to see that he had progressed to doing this from where he started. To see his growth, I think that was the most rewarding part of student teaching for me. And then my favorite part of student teaching, unfortunately Lisa George couldn't be here, but she loved this assignment. She got to see the first lesson we did on this. We had the students create their own superhero, which is why I said that we could make each child a superhero, because they got so excited to create their own identity. And this little boy decided that he was going to be Electric Man. So, but if you read all of the powers, they have like fire and ice and stuff, so it's not really electric, but they had such a fun time. And to differentiate, since we had the lower kids, we had them skip every other line to write because they were getting so frustrated because some of the kids in the higher class were writing 5, 6, 7 pages. And they were, why can't I write that much? And I told them, it's not how much you write, it's what you write. The greatest novelist could write a whole big encyclopedia-sized book, but if he can tell the story in 160 pages, wouldn't you rather read that instead of a whole big book? So obviously that went over your head, but the point was we were able to help them feel better about themselves, and that's what differentiation should be. making each child feel like they're succeeding. And each child had their own little biography in there. They had a dedication page. And then they were so excited to take pictures and show off their work. It was so wonderful to be a part of this. And I just wish that we could have every child feel this way, because they were so confident about writing after this that it was the best assignment they could have been given. So how can you implement differentiated instruction? So first of all, you have to figure out what the student struggles with. And it's easier if you have a child that has an IEP, because in the IEP it tells you these are the goals that your student needs to achieve. So that's pretty much spelled out for you. But if you have a child that didn't meet the requirements to get an IEP, then you have to sit down and figure out, what do they struggle with? What are they good at? And you have to play to their strengths. And you have to play to their interests. That's why the superheroes was so special for them, because they didn't have to pick one that was already made. As we know, there's more superhero boys than girls, but the girls were able to create their own. And that's why it was so special to them. And you have to discern a goal for each student. And think about how the student shows they're learning best. Implement group work and adapted work and real-life problem solving. Remember that everyone learns in a different way. And so yesterday, the kids had a surprise party for me. And this is my little friend who struggled so much with reading. And a lot of the kids decided that they wanted to make speeches for me. And unfortunately, I couldn't record all of them, but I was able to get his. And it was just so special with me. I wanted to share it with all of you.
Peppermint starts with a P because she has special powers. The powers of Miss Peppermint. Do you know why?
Why, Will?
Because they both have P's.
And so to finish, I teach. What is your superpower?